So I want to record the intro for Schnark, and the dog won't stop barking. So this is the intro.
Good afternoon, my Cracker Tugas. I'm MBT, and this is 20 Spirit Testing. As we approach Dallas, I was under the impression that we'd just be saddled into 30 consecutive lunar mirrors. As the format has developed, however, it's becoming increasingly clear that, this shit ain't solved at all. For that reason, we're spending this week playing a deck I've always wished was good, Schnark. So here's the list. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course the card by card. But first, if you've been compelled to casting by my videos, I've got great news for me! I've got an affiliate code in the Elestrals shop, so if you're picking up cardboard or plushies, please use that link down there. It helps the channel immensely. Now back to the video. With that, let's settle into Schnark. Schnark is a 1-cost water Elestral with a curious effect. On cast, he can search your deck for a card with a 1 lunar, 1 water enchantment and add it to your hand. This incredibly restrictive cost actually has about a half dozen relevant targets, including Tsunami High Tide, Draking, Rock and a Hard Place, and Joblin, his intended ascension. Joblin's absolutely bonkers, drawing a card every time the position of an Elestral is switched, and this ain't once per turn. We're talking pre-ban Drataya. I'm playing it in a brew I admittedly have shamelessly stolen from locals, approximating it as best as I can remember. Despite Schnark being the focus of the deck, however, the most important card in here is probably Foamy, who can pivot into any one of your water weirdos, provided it steers clear of a Specterus. Sluggles keep you alive, Rise is a payoff for Joblin Deep Draw. It's a perfect, wet mess. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First up, we've got our waters. 3 copies of Edward, 3 copies of Foamy, 1 copy of Galaxy. You get into positions sometimes where you just want a guy who can attack really well, and this is a good get off of Foamy in that situation. 2 Schnark. I know that the deck is Schnark, and you'd expect to see 3 Schnark, but this card is so much better getting off a Foamy than just casting. It puts it way, way, way less vulnerable to cards like Gorgon's Gaze, for instance. 3 copies of Sluggle, 1 Joblin, which is kind of the heart and soul of the deck. This card is so hard to get over. He has 8 attack, and importantly, can change the position of Elestrals that aren't water enchanted, then draws whenever an Elestral changes their position. Now, there's so many things you can do with this. Of course, you can use his own effect to trigger it, but also Eddie triggers it, switching your own guys that are already on field in a board state where you're ahead triggers it, and as soon as you trigger it 2 or 3 times, you've just completely won the game. Kuribus is in here as well. 9 is a lot of attack, but importantly, this card is also quite strong in a deck that's playing Eddie and can search Rock and a Hard Place. We're playing 3 Astrabbit, which, if I recall, wasn't in the list that I stole from locals, but I think this combo deck actually does need this card to get off to the races. 1 Draking as another beater that can be searched off of Schnark, and then our Invoke Runes. We've got an Earthquake, 2 Rise, 1 Rock, 1 Tsunami High Tide, which of course draws off of Joblin, 2 Tsunami, which draws off of Joblin, and 2 Atlantis. For our Rainbow Runes, we've got Ambrosia, Resting. I think Nectar of the Gods is really important to this strategy. You just need to be able to have a lot of cards, and a situation where you could potentially deep draw into something like a Rise from the Depths or an Atlantis to get a guy on field who can be hard ascended over is often important, as is the Rise from the Ashes, which does the same. The cost on this card is way less important because you're playing cards like Sluggle, but obviously still a ton. 3 Shield and 3 Gorgon's Gaze. No PTA in here, no room. For Boy Math, we've got 2 Taratless. We've got, 13 Water Spirits, 2 Zaptor, and 3 Owloon. I gotta be honest, I think this is a low amount of Water Spirits relative to what you have to be playing. I would be willing to consider dropping the Earthquake just to fit a couple more in, but we'll just be clever about it. Let's check out a game. Our match is up against Lunar Aggro, and I'm super happy to look at this grip. We've got an Astrabbit off the top, and I guess we'll take the Nog. I really don't want to see the Joblin this early, nor the Sluggle. So let's just see if we can get a couple of cards that can advance our game plan. Schnark and a Gorgon's Gaze, pretty much the perfect 2. We're going to go ahead and set 1, pass it back to our opponent, dare them to do anything. Our opponent's going to go ahead and slam down a Werepup. I really don't like Gorgon's Gazing the Werepup in the dark. I think there's so much more you can do with this card, and a lot of the time I really do just want my opponent to commit to the spirits on something like a Full Moon. Hilariously, Like a Void also doesn't beat Joblin, so like our guy being bigger than their guy is pretty important for a lot of reasons. Okay, let's draw a card here. We're going to go for the raw Schnark. You never really want to do this because Gorgons is so prevalent, but they let it resolve. This is a perfect opportunity, I think, to start toolboxing, and the best card here, I imagine, is probably Rock in a Hard Place. We're going to go ahead and cast Rock in a Hard Place. We're going to target both the Werepup and the back row. This is super frustrating for our opponent because they could either elect to keep the Full Moon, lose the Werepup and potentially use it on a future card, or inversely, keep the Werepup and maybe I miss the Full Moon or something. They also can't chain to it, which is really rough. I asked if they wanted something to do before Rock in a Hard Place. You probably should be in the habit of doing that if you're playing this deck. But from here, I'm just going to try and use the Atlantis to get over the Werepup with the Schnark and then get in one direct with Astrabbit. As you can see, we're already at 13. This deck goes really low, really early, so I do want to be pressuring pretty much the whole time. Sluggles be damned. Down comes Galaxy. While Galaxy is an impressive card against any water strategy, we do have a Gorgon set. This is going to be a pretty devastating attack. They elect to go into the Schnark rather than go into the Astrabbit, which I am very happy about. That means that we can, of course, Battle Step Gorgons, bringing it down to a 2-5, make that a 3-6, which is not competitive versus our 4-4 Schnark. We're going to develop the Foamy here, and we're just going to try and get in. Foamy is a little vulnerable here to cards like Resting on Your Laurels, but not a lot we can do about that. Down comes Spectress, and we kind of fuss over this for a little bit. I'm wondering if there's a way I can profitably Gorgons so the Spectress does walk over the Foamy, but does not suppress it. And it turns out there is, but before we could get that ruling, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to take the tempo win here. We're going to Shield of Achilles, put the Spectress back in hand, and then if we develop the Sluggle, we go up to 12. We can put our opponent down to like 9. We're so far ahead on Spirits. I think it is probably worth getting them to develop the Spectress over the course of 2 turns. So we're just going to expend 1, spend 1, and then we're going to go ahead and check the bin real quick for waters for our Sluggle. We're going to develop the Sluggle, use the Sluggle effect to put these 3 bad boys back, and try and get in for 4 here. Our opponent's going to take it. One of the other upsides to playing a deck like this is you are so immune to cards like Tsunami that it doesn't even matter. Our opponent's also gripping a Cryoblast, which is historically pretty good against a lot of decks that are in water just because of like its applications versus Edward. But here, unfortunately, the combination of the Atlantis and just not playing low-statted guys means it doesn't really have any, application. So our opponent's going to develop the Spectres, once again, going down to 8 in the process. I figure the Battle Step Gorgons is deployable here because we've been told it's okay. They're going to go for the Ambro, hoping not to die on the Crackback. Honestly, a pretty good idea, given how aggressive I've been over the course of this game. That Spectress is going to instead go into the Sluggle here. Kind of the number one scary guy that could show up. But Edward here is going to try and make quick work of the Spectress, going to eat a Gorgon's Gaze. That's fine. All Eddie really ever does is trade for back row. He's got a Breaker, the Magical Warrior. We will proactively Gorgons the Spectress so we can walk our Foamy, and going to have to do some math here. The Foamy is going to go to the Underworld. We will go ahead and cast from our deck. I believe I go for the Joblin off the Schnark here. Schnark triggers, we grab Joblin, and now we've got 4 guys. We're going to try and crash with the Schnark as well and eat a second Gorgon's Gaze. That's so exciting, especially because we're trying to develop Joblin next turn. Now, we've got 4 dudes that all have to be dealt with, or else this Joblin is going to be a real problem. Our opponent's going to set 2, but they're on 5, so probably if they develop 2 Gorgon's Gaze, we are going to win the game. They do get a couple of good attacks in here. The Spectress can, of course, trade with one of the Schnarks. The Werepup can trade with the Astrabbit. But we are really about to blow out their back walls, and that draw is really good, too. I go over the Schnark, and then I think for a second, and I'm like, actually, I'm supposed to go over the Eddy here. Ascension over the Eddy, and then bringing back the Schnark here, just swapping it out. Because the Schnark is in defense, and here can switch to attack to draw us a card. We can also use Rise from the Depths to bring back the Yeti in defense, trigger its effect, and draw another card. So we are going to go ahead and get a draw here off the Spectre switch. We're going to switch off the Schnark for a second draw. Then we're going to go for the Rise. We're going to do a little bit of checking our Spirit deck first and Ambro back a bunch of Water Spirits first. Then we'll fire off the Rise. We'll Rise for a Leviathan. We'll bring back the Eddy. we are going to use the Eddy effect to switch the Werepup. That draws us another card. We're going to set 2 Tsunamis, which also translate into cards. We're going to go combat here. I walk into the Spectress and then the Werepup here with the Joblin because I want the replay if the Leica Void comes out. Remember, I do still probably know that there is a Full Moon set because that Werepup was developed without an effect. They're going to go for Rabbit here. Rabbit's funny, but I think does nothing with 3 spirits in the Spirit deck. It's got to be like Ambro plus some number of like Invoke runes. I really don't see it panning out. I'm just too far ahead from this position. They're going to Cryoblast the Eddy, finally having found a suitable target for the card that's been rotting in their hand the whole game. They're going to pass it back to me, and I now want to just get silly. We're going to go Joblin. I'm going to draw a card. That's going to switch the Rabbit to attack. We're going to go Ambro to get a bunch of the Leviathan back. We're going to go Rise, targeting the Eddy. We're going to summon the Eddy in defense, and then we're going to Eddy target itself so we can draw another card. At this point, my opponent is playing face up to let me know that they have already lost the game, but I won't listen to it. Instead, we're going to go Schnark to defense. Then we're going to send over the Schnark into a Draking. Then we're going to activate the effect of Tsunami in order to switch the Astrap to defense and draw another card. Okay, we win. So we're back with the deck, and wowza, that went way better than expected. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1, Joblin is a house and a half. This guy really draws like 8 cards per turn. There's funny tricks you can do with Tsunami, with Eddy, with Rise, and more. And he's got 8 attack. Who has 8? 2, the water stuff is still really strong. Galaxy is super annoying. Sluggles keep you healthy the whole game, and Edward is still there forcing out back row. And 3, Rock in a Hard Place is so funny into Werepup. And the cons. 1, deck's tight. I'd like to go up on Nog, on Ashes, on Ambro, but I really don't have any idea what I'd even cut. There's so many cards to toolbox into that there's kind of more box than tools. 2, you can get really low really quickly. You spend a lot between Foamies and Schnark and Atlantis and 2 Spirit Invokes. If you don't see a Sluggle, it can get hairy. And 3 is Spectress. There's still some suppressors in the game, and Spectress is extremely popular. A deck with this much foam really doesn't want to be on his bad side. All in all, I think this deck is way better than people give it credit for, but of course the bar for Schnark is really low.